Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome to Southern Jewish Voices. My name is Brooke Bowles. I'm the Executive Director here at the Levitt Jewish Community Center, and we're so happy to have you here today. You're in for a big treat with Beth, Scherer-Smokey, and Martin Stein. So Southern Jewish Voices is a program we started almost 2 years ago to celebrate the lives and the stories of Jewish individuals who live in Birmingham, Alabama, and to hear their story of what it's like to be Jewish in Birmingham. Originally, this project was funded through the Alabama Humanities Alliance, and recently we have also been able to get some funding from the Ted and Marjorie Levitt LJCC Fund at the Birmingham Jewish Foundation, and we are so pleased to partner with Temple Bethel, Margaret Norman, to facilitate these talks. So enjoy your lunch and enjoy the interview.
Thanks, Brooke. And just want to say a big thank you to Beth and Martin for being here with us today. I'm really excited to speak with both of you. And, we've really tried to, throughout the 2 seasons of this program, bring in as many voices from different parts of the Jewish community as we can, but we haven't actually had anyone from Knesseth Israel yet. And so when we were planning this year, that was really important to me, and I was really glad that you both jumped in. Especially because you both fill some sort of different roles at KI to talk to us. So with that, I'm going to let you both introduce yourselves, and we can start with Beth and then go to Martin. And what I'd love is for you to just, tell us a little bit each about your respective roles at KI, and we'll start with Beth.
Okay, so my name is Beth Scherer-Smokey, and I'm originally from New York. I've been in Birmingham for 32 years, and I am a chiropractor, and I also do acupuncture. My role at Knesseth Israel is, I guess I'm like the social director. I'm the person who's in charge of organizing the Purim event. I'm the person who's organizing the Hanukkah event. So when somebody at the synagogue says, well, somebody needs to take care of blank, I'm the somebody. And I'm the person who takes care of most of those things. I was also the person who came up with the idea of our food cart, which we'll talk about later.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi, I'm Martin Stein, originally from Skokie, Illinois. I've been here in Birmingham since 1992. I'm the gabbai, or keeping things moving on Shabbat morning. So everybody, you having trouble hearing me? I'll speak up. Okay, I'm gabbai at Knesseth Israel, and I say, it's in simple terms, I'm the one who keeps everybody going, gives out the aliyahs, make sure we're moving on time, because I like to have the service moving as much as I can. I'm also treasurer on the board, and Beth had mentioned that she's also the secretary on the board. So, and then the other thing I do is try to organize the Shabbatones, bring in different speakers. We had three really wonderful, nice young guys looking to become rabbis from Lakewood, New Jersey, just recently. We had, and we have other rabbis. We've had some renowned rabbis. So Rabbi Reinwib is like I think he's considered one of the highest up in the OU organization. So he came last summer. We're lucky to have his son here in town as part of our as part of KI, and we're lucky we also have what you guys do without rabbis. We actually have 2 rabbis that are part of our membership that come regularly on Shabbat. So we're not really rabbi-less. We just don't have a pulpit rabbi.
Yeah, and I should point out, y'all are both volunteers, really dedicated volunteers.
Yeah, so we don't earn any money for what we do.
Amazing how much you do for the synagogue. So just, probably everybody here in this room knows a little bit about Knesseth Israel already, but there are going to be lots of people listening to this video who might not be familiar or might not know the distinctions between different denominations in Judaism. So can you just tell us a little bit about, Orthodox Judaism and sort of what makes KI different from Temple Bethel or Temple Emmanuel, for example?
I grew up a Reformed Jew, and I did not realize, really, you have, I guess you could say you have the main 3, Reformed, Conservative, Orthodoxy. But within Orthodoxy, I would say there's more differences from what you would call liberal Orthodoxy all the way to ultra-Orthodoxy. There's probably more differences within Orthodoxy than really between the 3 main branches as we know them. And KI sits in the modern Orthodox realm, which is, if you're going to go, say, left to right, it's more on the liberal side. But but the makeup of our congregation really would be people you might call Reform or Conservative, but we all but we all attend a modern Orthodox synagogue.
Okay, yeah, that's super helpful, and probably helpful for people to understand, because I do think that oftentimes people think sort of Orthodox as one category, and it's very diverse. And within that too, it was really interesting to me when we spoke originally. We ended up talking a little bit about the differences in your own practices, but also in your Jewish journeys. And so I'm hoping, and let's go again, Beth to Martin. Can you each tell us a little bit about your own Jewish journey, because neither of you grew up in the modern Orthodox tradition?
Correct. So I grew up going to conservative. So in Long Island, I went to a conservative synagogue, and I went through Hebrew school in a conservative synagogue. And then when I came to Birmingham, I was really nothing. I had belonged to Temple Bethel originally, and then I really wasn't very active at all. And then I started going to Chabad for a little bit. I had a patient who introduced me to Chabad, and I didn't even know what Chabad was, and I started going. And I decided that I was going to try to give Judaism a chance, and I said to myself that I was going to go for 1 year for Shabbats, and and learn as much as I could. And after the year, if I was still comfortable, I'd continue. And if I wasn't comfortable, then I said, okay, I gave it a year, and I've been doing it now for about 25 years. I continued. I started going to KI, and I started going to services there, and then I saw that there was like a need for help, and so I decided to join the board, and I became very involved at that point.
And one more just follow-up question for you too, because this came up in our conversation. I thought it was really interesting to talk to you about this, but you are married to somebody who's not Jewish.
That is correct.
Still maintain a very traditional practice, so maybe tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll ask you for your journey too, Martin.
Okay, so so I was married twice, so both of my husbands were not Jewish. But with the second husband, I was very clear after our very first date that we would not go on a second date unless he agreed that if it went further and we were to get married and have children, that the children would not only be raised Jewish, but they would be raised Orthodox Jewish. Not necessarily because I thought that they would stay Orthodox, but that I wanted them to really understand Judaism, because for me, I felt like when I started learning, I didn't realize how much I didn't know. And I really felt like I didn't want them to make decisions on Judaism without having knowledge. And so I felt that the Orthodox way of learning would give them the best education in order to make decisions on how, make good decisions on how they want to pursue their Judaism.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Uh-huh.
Okay, before we get into any follow-ups on that, Martin, tell us a little bit about your journey.
As I mentioned earlier, I was raised a Reformed Jew. My mom was more of almost like a atheist. My dad was very proud to be a Jew, but he wasn't raised with much religious background himself. So I went had a bar mitzvah and did like so many do, I guess. After bar mitzvah, you're pretty much you're done, right? You're done. So. But it wasn't until I was, I had made I wanted to go to Israel at some point, and after graduate school, I said, okay, I'm going, and I went to Israel, and I went to a non-religious kibbutz, and then I saw an interesting listing of something called Livnot U'Lehibanot, to build or be built, and it was designed for English speakers who didn't grow up religious to be exposed to what it was to live an Orthodox life. It was like a 3-month program, and our own probably in Israel probably saying, "No, thank you, Martin, for advertising my program." But anyway, so that was my first really introduction of living what would be a Shomer Shabbat, Shomer Kashrut life, and then came and back here looking for a job, and ended up here in Birmingham. And one reason I wanted to come south because I was tired of Chicago winters. I'm not a big fan of winter, so. And though there's a little bit of winter here, but not too much. No shoveling 2 feet of snow. So then I sort of was still trying to find myself Judaically. So I think my first couple years here, I actually went to Emmanuel. I went to Bethel. Went to KI. Then I spent I probably went back to spending more time with Bethel. And I was really. And then at that point, I went to a Jewish singles event and met my wife Leslie, and it was in Virginia Beach. And as we got to know each better, we started dating, and she was also on a journey to become more religious, and so we sort of became more observant together. And what really got it going was when we adopted some boys from Guatemala, and that's sort of, we wanted them to have full now, like Beth was saying about her boys, have the knowledge. It's very important to have the knowledge, because if you don't have the knowledge, you don't know what you don't know or do know. So we went with Orthodox conversion, and that sort of brought it all together, that we became Shomer Shabbat and kosher Jews. So
I'm kind of curious for both of you, because you've both raised, children in a slightly different tradition than what you grew up with. I mean, what has that been like to raise children, in a Jewish way that was different than how you were raised? That could be for either of you.
Go ahead.
well, I say they know so much more than I do. I mean, they'll mention stuff that's okay. I trust them because they know it more than I do. So it is different, not being that way. But that's what I wanted. But that's what we wanted for them, to be very knowledgeable. And I grew up in, my older one at Shiva University uses terms that I don't. Sometimes I'm not familiar with. I said, what did he mean by that? Because there's a lot of what they call yeshivas. Yeshivish. It's almost like a tongue of its own.
Yeah,
right.
So,
but I'm I think like any Jewish parent, they want their children to be more knowledgeable, more skillful, have a better life than they. So I mean, it's really what we wanted for them. Yeah.
Would you add anything to that, Beth?
So my children went into two different paths. One became more Zionist, and so he is currently just served in the Israeli Defense Force. He was on the border of Lebanon during this war. He got called back as a reservist, and he just got let go of reserve duty right now. But if there's a war with Lebanon, he has to go back. Mm-hmm. So he is very now Israeli. He speaks Hebrew fluently. He is applying to schools in Israel for university. He is, he really put his time into the military, and he's very pro-Israel. And he keeps kosher. He's probably he's not like truly like ultra Orthodox, but he keeps to that. The other son went the other direction. He really, he goes to Alabama. He is in the Jewish fraternity, but he's not, like, he really chose to kind of go a different path and not as religious a path, but he still has the knowledge. And so I'm okay with it, because at least he did it based on what he learned. Like, he didn't go off of no knowledge. He went off of knowledge, and this was his path. So hopefully he might come back. He might not come back. We'll see. But in the interim, he's still involved in Judaism as much as he can be.
That's a great perspective, and I love how you framed that too, that you wanted them to just have the knowledge to make the choices they were going to make, and you saw them go these different ways.
Yes.
So, okay, I've got sort of two more personal questions for you all, and then we'll get into KI and some of the things that are happening there too. So one, and this is just again getting at that sort of like diversity within Judaism as well. Can you talk a little bit about your sort of different levels of observance today, now that you are sort of reached this part in your journey? Because it sounded like you all do have some differences. And Martin specifically, I'd love if you two could touch on sort of any of the challenges of being sort of a more observant Jew in Birmingham, Alabama.
Probably the biggest issue we have as a family is probably eating out. Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, you don't really have, and that's sort of I guess a segue to the food truck. But no, really, being Bo's Cafe, we can't just go out and get, obviously, ordering or get pizza delivery, right? Or we can go to Publix, not the same thing, or whatever. So that's one thing I'll throw this in. We were just in Las Vegas for my wife's birthday, and thank God they have lots and lots of kosher restaurants. So we were able to, and we had a suite with a kitchen in it, so it really made life wonderful. We were able to eat out a lot and eat some really good food. But so that's like a treat for us. If I go back to Chicago, seeing family, there's lots of kosher restaurants. So that would probably be it's not that hard. It's probably harder for Leslie, who does 99% of the cooking, because she has to do 99% of the cooking, right? So, but I would say that's probably, nothing else is really, it's just the inability to eat out, what I would say is the most difficult thing.
We'll put a pin in that, because that will bring us to the food cart, definitely.
Yeah, if that's what you're, everything else is really just, I don't know, the holidays are not difficult, being Shomer Shabbos, observing the Shabbat is not difficult here. I would think the food is the biggest difference of not being versus being.
Yeah. And Beth, what about you? What does your observance look like today?
So I would say I'm more on a conservative lean. I go to synagogue, and every Saturday I'm in town, but I will, I'll drive, and I will go out to eat, but I'll just try to stick with fish or vegetarian type dishes.
And then one more sort of question for you all about your own journeys here. So you both are not from Birmingham or Alabama, but I know you both lived in the South before coming to Alabama. But I am curious, coming from New York, Chicago, any sort of culture shock coming from those places to Southern Jewish communities? What was that transition like?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the only thing I thought was that was like kind of culturally weird for me when I first came to Birmingham was that in New York there were no like choruses or organ playing or in any of the synagogues. Not the Reform. I've been to the Reform there, and I've been to the Conservative there. I've never been to an Orthodox service, but I would certainly think they didn't have it either. But I never saw that until I came to the South.
Oh,
like when
interesting.
people had choruses, and usually people, the audience just did the singing. Even in the Reform and Conservative, So when I came here and I saw that there was like people playing instruments and music, I was like, wow, that's really strange to me. That was something
interesting
that was
little
different.
thing I wouldn't have thought of. What about for you?
I don't know. Really wasn't. I lived in Lubbock, Texas. Lived in Hilo, Hawaii, which was really smaller than Birmingham. So I didn't. I just it. Other than they're really maybe the accent, and you hear things about you read about Birmingham's history, and you may expect certain things. But as I tell people who ask me about Birmingham, said Birmingham's no longer like it was in the '60s. Actually, I think thanks to UAB in a very cosmopolitan area now that it's not really the South anymore, really. I think if you talk to people just like Atlanta, so many people are not from here, right? I mean, if you look at I think the KI membership, I think we have one person born. I don't know, one person actually, maybe a couple more, but
a lot of people are not from here originally. Okay, interesting. Well, perfect transition. Let's talk a little bit more about KI. And I'm hoping maybe you could both start by telling me, just helping sort of set the scene for KI as a congregation. What makes KI special or unique, or what do you want people to know about KI as a community?
Well, as I always say before, I always say that it's like Cheers. Everybody knows your name. I think we're like one big happy family. We're not. It's very personal because we're not that large. We all know each other very well, and I think it's like one big happy family. We may get mad at each other like a family member, but then think just like any other family member, all peace breaks out afterwards. But I think it's one night. So that's why I always say when people ask me that question, it's like you're just like you're at Cheers. There's not always beer hanging out all around. But
how big is KI? Do you know how many, like, sort of roughly set a sort of size range for us, for people who aren't as familiar?
I mean, we make a minyan pretty much every Shabbat, and then we also have as many women as men, so that'd be like a 20 on Shabbat. If we have a bigger event, we probably get up to 50, maybe.
Yeah,
Right?
I'd say between 20 and 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about for you, Beth? What makes KI special or unique, or what do you want people to know about it as a community?
Well, I would say two things. One is that for a small community, we have a lot of volunteers. So, and I'll give an example for Purim. So for Purim, we made these Shlach gift bags, and we decided to do it. It was our first year doing it, and so I had to round up some volunteers, and I was. Not only did I find volunteers, but they took over. They did most of the work. I was so grateful. I was like, this is great. I don't really have to do much of anything. And they made like these beautiful baskets. They did, we had ones that sold for $5 and one that sells for $118. And the people who gave the $118, actually half of the net profit is going to a Israeli organization that feeds the poor. So we're not, like, we'll make a little bit of money, but really we're also giving to another organization. But so far, like when I've needed help with things, I've been able to call people and I've been able to get a great response on volunteers. And for a small community, I thought that that would be difficult, but it really hasn't been that difficult. I've been able to find help, which is great. The second thing is that our Shabbats are just lovely. Like a lot of times people will give, like the lay people will give talks, and you would think after, each week you read what's called a parsha or a chapter of the Torah, and then you read a haftorah. And at the end you would think, okay, after 25 years of going to synagogue and reading the Torah over and over again, that you want to know something new. But then somebody comes and talks, and you're like, wow, I didn't know this. And I love that. I love that with each week comes more knowledge, and in a nice, relaxing way. It's not like somebody's getting up there and giving an hour talk. They're just kind of mentioning something that they learned and sharing, and it's lovely.
That's one, and it does seem to fit in with Martin's description of a sort of familial environment. That does sound really lovely.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about different changes that have happened at KI in the last few years, and kind of leading us into talking about the food cart here,
Okay.
but maybe sort of set the context for us as well.
Okay, so we were in a large building and off of Overton Road, and then that building got sold in August of 2 years ago. Has it been 2 years?
22, yeah.
Yeah, 22. And so we had to move the stuff from a large building into a house. So it was the house that the rabbi was living in, and we pretty much took it over and we converted it into a synagogue. So we have our Torahs in there. We have we have like one room that's where we pray. Then we have another room where we eat our food. We have the kitchen, and we turned it and we converted the upstairs into guest rooms. So when people come to visit, they have a place that they can sleep.
Nice.
Yeah, and then the downstairs, we have like a playroom for kids, and we have a library that has like all the learning books and stuff like that. And so so that was a challenge because we had to fit everything from a big building into a house.
Did you have to get rid of a lot of things?
We had to get rid of a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to get rid of. We had to get rid of a lot of things, and at the same time, we were doing as our fundraiser an estate sale. So we had. Every room was filled with estate sale stuff. Like we were inundated with estate sale stuff. The community was really helpful. Both the Jewish and non-Jewish community donated tons of stuff for us, and but we had to finish out our last estate sale, and we had to do it at the house. So we had to move all that stuff into the garage, which was a miracle that we got everything in, but we did. And then we did our last estate sale, and then we realized there was no way we could do another one because we really didn't have the room to do the estate sale.
And had you been doing this every year? This was a fundraiser you always did?
This was a fundraiser that we've done probably the last 5 or 6 years, and with each year it grew. So and we sold like beautiful stuff, and we made a good bit of money for the synagogue doing it. It was a lot of work, but the problem that we had when moving into the house was that we really just didn't have room to put all the stuff and be able to do an estate sale like we did at the old building. So we knew that had to end, and we finished our last estate sale. And then right after that, the rabbi that was there decided to take a job in New Zealand, and that was about a couple of weeks prior to Rosh Hashanah. So we had to then organize, after the estate sale, we then had to organize all the high holidays in a new building with no rabbi, but we did it.
That's a lot.
We got everything put together. We got people to lead services. We got people to come and make the minions, and we had like really a lovely Rosh Hashanah. We had lovely high holidays. Like really, it was heartwarming because the community really stepped up and helped us. They came to help us make the minions. They came to help in any way that they could to get us through the high holidays and get us on our feet.
And you mean the community like beyond KI?
Yes, beyond KI, yes.
That's really nice.
Yeah, Bethel came and helped, and Chabad came to help, and people really pitched in and did what they could to help us get through these high holidays, and then make sure that we were able to get on our feet and sustain ourselves in the house.
So I've got sort of one question about the transition to the house, and then I want to talk about the food cart, and this could be for both of you. But so I'll just share too. I actually grew up in a congregation that was in a house, not in a synagogue, because I was in rural environments, and our congregation was in a farmhouse, and I have really fond
I like that.
memories of that actually, and it was really different, than coming somewhere where there's a sort of a more formal synagogue building. So I'm curious for you all, have you liked being in that environment? Has it been a transition, an adjustment? Like, what has just the difference in the physical space been like for you? Because it is a different environment.
Right. I personally prefer it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like because we're a small community in a big building makes us look so tiny, and in a small community in a smaller space makes us look big, and the energy, and it brings better energy into the space. And,
no, that makes sense actually.
Yeah.
And it's making me think of this sort of, that comfortable environment that you're describing, that might be a nice thing. But Martin, tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, it was sort of. And toward the end of being in the big building, people could space out, but it wasn't really much it didn't, I think, help the spiritualism or the singing together. It was missing from that because you were spread out. Now we're close to each other, and it's much more spiritual, and because people are using their voices, and it comes together, I think, in a much more smaller room. I think it's much warmer and much nicer not to be so spread out and really be on your own, and almost in a way. It worked for COVID real well, But
I was actually thinking about that when you said it. That was probably great for COVID.
COVID, yeah. But outside of that, it really wasn't something. It just wasn't. And when if you have people from out of town, that they look in there, it's not. Here you see a lot of people close together. It's just a much warmer feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually sounds really nice. It sounds wonderful. Well, so tell us then how the idea of the crepe cart comes about, because it kind of, as I understand, came out of knowing that you weren't going to be able to do that estate sale again. So how did you get from we're not going to do the estate sale to we're going to have a crepe cart?
Okay, so we knew that the estate sale had to end, just like you said, and we knew that we had to do another fundraiser. So towards the end of the estate sale, Judy, who was the person who really organized the estate sale, she and I would sit down, and I would throw ideas at her, and almost every idea she would be like, no, 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 no. And then I said, well, what about a cart, a food cart? And she goes, I like that idea. And we together came up with, I don't know whether it was Judy's idea or my idea. I guess Judy would have to say it was Judy's idea. I don't remember. But came up with the crepes. And so we came up with crepes because, one, nobody else was selling them, and we looked it up, and there were no crepe carts that we saw on Google in Birmingham, and we thought also that we can be competitive in the market, because with doing crepes, there's not a lot of ingredients. Like, we don't have to order any high-priced meats. We would have to order some cheeses, but we can keep that under control.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like fruits and vegetables and and a little bit of cheese, some cheese and sauces. So we can keep our prices competitive with what the other food carts were selling or what restaurants were selling, so we can stay in the market. And that's how we came up. And then we had a meeting, and the rabbi that was at the synagogue at the time, he came up with the name Holy Crepe. And
Which
I thought
is a great name.
And there are other Holy Crepe food carts around the world, around America, but none in Birmingham, and they're not trademarked, so we could use the name. And so we did that. And then the JCC was really great. They helped us because we couldn't have a food cart without having a commissary. And so you have to have. Well, we needed a kosher establishment that was had a commercial kitchen to be our commissary, and the JCC graciously allowed to be our commissary. So if it wasn't for the JCC, we couldn't have existed either, because we had no commercial kitchen in the house.
Yeah,
so we had to have a commercial
sense.
kitchen. So
and then tell me about how the chef came to be too, because I thought that was a really
you
interesting.
tell that story. You know about the chef more than I do.
It just happened that there was his brother was already here, and the chef Nathan was looking for somewhere to work. He was going to come visit. He was going to come visit his brother here and see the community. And
He was coming from Ukraine.
Right, he was already. But
Didn't he come from Ukraine?
I think he was here already a little bit.
A little bit, okay.
Yeah, but he had a major food. He was in charge of in the Ukraine and Uman, which has a large. I mean, I think at sometimes it's maybe over 100,000 people come for Rosh Hashanah to visit the grave of Rabbi Nachman. So he was in charge of heading up most of the food for that, and then for other regions in Uman. So he also had a food cart in Brooklyn that did so well that some of the ultra-Orthodox were not happy because there were some social gatherings between the males and females, and that's right. And he actually had two separate ways. He had a male side and a female side. And anyway, but so he has a lot of experience, and it just happened that they were, I guess, Yossi, who's the brother, not the chef, said, "Oh yeah, my brother has experience," because we had sent out information, tried to advertise, for the position, and really didn't get. We got a few responses, but nowhere did anybody have the experience that Nathan did. So it was like very lucky that Yossi was already here, saw it, and said, "Oh, well, my brother would probably be. You guys need to meet my brother because he's a chef and he has food truck experience." So
it all kind of came together. And I loved too, you shared with me that now you've also had the bonus that he's part of your congregation. Yes. And so I thought that worked out nicely. Mm-hmm.
But there's one thing I want to throw in for the food truck. People don't like crepes. We make delicious smoothies. They're really good smoothies. All fruit, all basically, all they are is fruit, and they are delicious. So I just want to, in case you all don't like crepes, everybody loves a smoothie, right?
Our crepes are also delicious.
The crepes are delicious. Of course, crepes are delicious. But some people...
At the end, I'm going to ask you what your favorite crepe is, so think about your answer now. But so a couple other questions about the cart that I'm just curious about. One is, and again, sort of for some of our non-Jewish listeners who might be listening, maybe tell us a little bit about like what sort of the major rules are you need to keep at the kosher cart, and have there been any challenges there? You shared with me the story about the health department. I thought was kind of interesting.
So, as far as kashrut, so the only thing that really had to be ordered like separately that you couldn't get like in a supermarket here is the bulk cheese. I think that's the only ingredient.
Because
right?
fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
But fruit and vegetables, and that just makes sure no insect. Basically, we do have the veggie chicken and the veggie meat. But that's not too difficult to find kosher, really. And then...
I don't think there was any other problems.
Well, there's that protein powder. If you want to add the protein powder, you can add for the smoothies, and that was a little bit harder to find with Scherer on it.
So tell us about how you threw the health department for a little bit of a loop.
So the health department came to do our inspection, and so when they came in to do the inspection, we didn't know they have a probe that's a metal probe that they have to put into like the fruits, like into the containers. And so you're not allowed to put metal into the containers because if that metal had gone to another restaurant and it was put in, like you don't know where the metal has been. So it could have made the items not kosher. And so we would have had to then throw all the fruits and vegetables away. So Nathan had a probe, but the woman who was from the health department didn't want to use that probe because it had to be calibrated a little bit differently, and she wasn't familiar with how to calibrate that particular probe. So there was a problem, and so she was not happy, and she left. And so then the health department ended up calling me, and what we ended up doing to solve the problem is we just bought the same probe that the health department uses, and it just came in yesterday, so now we have one, and it'll be in our cart, so that when the health department people come, they just use our probe and it's the same probe, so they're already trained on it, and then they can use that to check our stuff.
So what I liked about that story is that I think, and I'm going to kind of lead you to another point here, but that's like a moment of education, right? About kosher and something that they just hadn't come across before. But so tell me a little bit about, when we talked previously, it seemed like there are some, very pragmatic goals for the food cart, but there are also some larger ones, like connecting with the non-Jewish community and providing a model for other Orthodox congregations. Tell me more about some of the sort of big things that you think the food cart can provide, on those types of paths.
So the great thing about the food cart is that we can go anywhere. Like we're not like, it's not like people come to us. We can go to people. So we can go to Jewish organizations or non-Jewish organizations. So I know Next month on a Sunday, we're actually going to some church festival.
Okay.
Yeah, they invited us to come, and we're going to be selling our crepes there. And then the Social Security Determination Office, which is like a huge complex, invited the cart to come for lunches, and now they want the cart to come for breakfasts. So they're going to do breakfast and lunch there. And then we have a school that's doing a teacher appreciation day, and they invited us to come. They have 60 people that they want to have crepes. Yeah, they want to serve crepes. So they called us, and we're going to be going there. So we can service both Jewish and non-Jewish places. I say one challenge, so we're going to talk about the Social Security place.
Yeah.
So one challenge is that now Passover is coming up. Well, we can't use the cart during Passover. So now we have to explain to a non-Jewish organization that yes, we'll be happy to come. You want us for breakfast, we'll be there. We'll want us for lunch, but we can't come for that week of Passover, and they want us to be there every day. So how do you explain that to but we explain, so we're having a conversation with them about it, and then they'll be okay.
And in some ways, that's a nice moment of education, right? It's like they might not have had it on their radar that was Passover, but now they know.
Right. Or, some people say, well, we have things, but they're on Saturdays. Well, we can't do Saturdays. Or we have some things and it's on Fridays. Well, we can't really do Fridays because Nathan, who does the food cart, also cooks our Shabbat lunches. So he has to do the Shabbat cooking on Fridays, and he doesn't have time to do the crepe cart and the Shabbat cooking. So Fridays and Saturdays are we can't do.
Yeah.
So, and Jewish holidays we can't do. So that has come up with a little bit of a challenge, but we've been able to overcome those challenges.
You're like a mobile Jewish calendar, spreading awareness.
And we just have to educate people as to why. Like, it's not because we don't want to. It's, it's because we just can't do it.
Yeah. What would you add, Martin?
I think after we left the big building, it seemed like just talking to people in the community, they said, "Oh, KI still is doing this. You guys are still alive." I think they thought we had just dwindled away because we weren't in the building anymore. And I think this shows that we are very active being here. Thank you for inviting us. But I think also the truck going around everywhere and seeing the connection with the JCC and KI, that we are vibrant and we are doing things and we haven't gone away. And I think that's very important.
So spreading awareness in the Jewish community too.
Yes.
That's cool. You're kind of hitting on both. And then tell me too, because I thought this was so interesting, and both of you can speak to this. But what do you think other Orthodox congregations, or even just smaller congregations, can learn from what you're doing?
So this is a future goal, not a now goal.
That's okay. You're not making any promises. We're just talking about your vision.
No promises. But it is a thought. It was a thought in my head that one thing we could do is, if the food cart gets off the ground, if the food cart can be successful, if the food cart can show that it's a moneymaker, it would be great for both Knesseth Israel and for other Orthodox communities to kind of use the food cart as a model to maybe make other food carts and bring in people from the Orthodox community, like from larger Orthodox communities, like from Maryland or from New York, maybe people who are a little bit off the derrick, or people who don't want to be a rabbi, looking for a job, that they can come and help us build our community while we can give them a job. We can have them maybe lease purchase or purchase a food cart. We can help them show how to make a successful food cart. But we have to have the model. And so we have to build a strong model first, and then we can look into what can happen with that in the future.
And y'all are in the first year of this, of course.
Yeah, we're in the first like 2 months. We're in the infancy. So we have no idea how this food cart is going to develop, but if it does, it could be a great model for the future.
But everybody said that everything is delicious, so we've had only good comments about the food.
Yeah. Well, that leads me into my closing question for you all. So hopefully some people in this room have already tried the food cart, but if not, what would you recommend we order? What's your favorite thing on the menu?
What's yours, Martin?
What's my favorite thing? It's all good. I know that the one that I've heard I like, and everybody else, the pizza crepe on the savory side. And on the sweet side, with the one that's the Dutch, I forget the name of it now.
The apple one?
The apple one, yeah.
That's good.
And then the smoothies, they're all good. All the smoothies are delicious.
What about you, Beth?
On the savory side, I like the smoked salmon crepe. It's lox with cream cheese and tomato and onion in a crepe, and
That does
it's
sound really good.
outstanding. And my favorite sweet one is the Nutella with strawberries.
Okay, well, that will give us all something to think about. And and I'll just have you say too, where can we find you if we wanted to go try something?
So KI has a Instagram. Well, we have a website and an Instagram account and possibly a Facebook account. I don't know. I'm not social
So
media
follow
savvy.
you somewhere on social media you can find out.
But if you called Knesseth Israel, we can put you on our text list, and we can text you every week where the food cart is going to be. We have a monthly schedule and a weekly schedule that Marshall, our office manager, has put together, and so they can text where the cart is going to be on a weekly basis.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
9695913.
Oh, and I should just say too before we close out, because we skipped over Knesset Israel history, because Beth and Martin generously brought these books that you can find on your tables. Those are available for you all to take if you haven't read it already.
And we want to thank Barbara Bonfield. So I want to give a special heads up, because Barbara Bonfield is not part of the KI community. She's, I believe she's a member of Bethel.
She is,
Yes.
yeah.
So, and she spent so much time putting together this really awesome book. And so I brought the books here. They're no charge. Take one. Help yourself. And enjoy. It's really a nice history of how Knesset Israel has developed over time.
Thank you both so much for being here today. Really enjoyed the conversation with you. So we'll give a round of applause for our guests here.